It's not a reprint, it's not just some knockoff, and it's still not educational comics. So we dodged that bullet. Howdy, I'm Kurt Williams, and today we're talking about new EC comics. We're looking at Cruel Universe and Epitaphs from the Abyss. I wouldn't have even known about these if it wasn't for the clerk at the comic shop who just gave these to me because he believes in them so much that he just wanted me to see what they were like. And you know, they're pretty good. I did not grow up reading EC comics, so I'm not really an expert, but from what I can gather, they are kind of a big deal. They were one of the first creator-focused publishing companies, with an emphasis on artistic integrity and the well-being of their artists. If you worked at EC, you were encouraged to develop your unique style and take creative risks, which is why we have such great stories as The Master Race, which is considered one of the most important and innovative stories in the history of comics. EC was a place for artists who were already good to become great, like John Severin, Wally Wood, Johnny Craig, and Frank Frazetta. The stories were usually very thought-provoking and included some kind of twist, and also established a lot of tropes that lasted in the comics medium for decades afterwards. And then, of course, Seduction of the Innocent came out in the 50s, and a lot of the blame for the rotting of children's brains was placed squarely on the shoulders of EC Comics. I mean, who can forget the famous decapitation cover that may not be decapitation because you can't see the neck? And following the establishment of the Comics Code Authority, which was so restrictive that the editors at EC simply did not follow it, and then their books would not sell because the retailers wouldn't pick them up. They had kind of a hard time going from the 50s into the 60s, and they had to focus more on Mad Magazine. And sometime in the 90s, I think we started seeing these reprinted editions, and those have really picked up steam, especially lately, especially now that we're getting these gorgeous hardcover editions of these stories. And there have also been plenty of knockoff series, such as Creepshow, which was not bad. People are trying to capture the chaotic energy that EC Comics had in their heyday. And, you know, I've been kind of dragging my heels. I'm pretty picky about how they reproduce color, so I want to get old reprints if I'm gonna get reprints, and the knockoffs just haven't had the same energy, they haven't had the same sense of style to them. But now, we've got an updated version of the real thing. So Oni Press is publishing EC Comics now, and they really put their best foot forward. I think between these two, Cruel Universe is my favorite, but both of these have high quality. And I was gonna skip over them. When the guy at the shop handed me these copies, I thought he was handing me some like facsimile editions or some reprints or something that really wasn't worth my money. But no, this is all new EC content and it is pretty good. Each of these issues has 4 short stories in it, and I was especially impressed by the stories in Cruel Universe. They are thought-provoking, emotionally engaging, and the twists at the end of each story genuinely have me surprised. I don't want to give away too much, but I think the first story and the 4th story hit especially hard. And that's what's great about EC Comics, is when you finish one of these super short stories that's like 10 pages or less, you're supposed to be able to sit back and go, whoa, that's bananas. Epitaphs from the Abyss was less entertaining for me because it doesn't really have twists, it doesn't have that shock ending, which is typical for the creepy titles that EC Comics has. Tales from the Crypt very rarely had twist endings, they're just supposed to creep you out. But I think the stories in general are just less hard-hitting. The first story is pretty good, I can identify with it quite a bit, honestly. The second story was okay, the third story was definitely an interesting premise, but I don't love the way it played out. And the 4th story was, I don't know what I'm supposed to take away from it, honestly. I don't know what it's trying to say. But there is great value in a platform for artists to actually be able to say something, because it's really hard to actually say what you want to say when you're dealing with characters that are supposed to represent everybody. I'm talking about Marvel and DC characters. You can only do so much with Spider-Man. My biggest complaint about the series so far is that I don't think the art is at the same caliber that EC Comics is famous for having. In the good old days, some of the absolute best artists in the medium worked for EC Comics, and the artists that are in these comics are, you know, average for the time. Aside from Dustin Weaver and Jorge Fornés, the artists in these issues are unknown to me. I do like the art in the 4th story from Epitaphs from the Abyss. That's by Vlad Legostaev, or however you say it, I don't know. And I also like the art from the 4th story in Cruel Universe. That's by Artyom Toplin. I don't know, I'm sorry. But aside from those 2 new artists and the 2 previously established artists, the rest of the art in these issues is kind of, I don't know, almost amateur. It's the kind of art that the average person would think of when they just think of comic books in general, but they haven't read any. Like if a group of friends who had never really read many comic books decided they were going to make one together just for the fun of it, this is probably what they would picture in their brains. So it is my hope that very talented artists will jump onto this project, because that could happen. We could get any artist, any writer at any point point in any of these series, and that's one of the coolest things about EC Comics. It is interesting that they chose to make the lettering so similar to classic EC Comics, because aside from that, the aesthetic is totally different. It's very modern, but it has that classic lettering on top of it, which feels like a weird contrast. But overall, it is really nice to see something that is so clearly a labor of love actually turn out good. I highly recommend that you pick it up for yourself, especially the Cruel Universe series, even though it is $5 each, because this is really what comics are all about. So I'm going to rate The Return of EC Comics an 8 out of 10. And really why it's an 8 instead of a 9 is because I wish that the art was working a little bit harder. I wish that they were able to get more prominent artists, but I understand that prominent artists are expensive and they gotta have an audience who's willing to buy it before they can afford to do that kind of thing. So please, go out and buy it so that we can get really good art on these. And then keep your eyes open for more information on the telethon that I'm going to be doing soon to raise money for every comic shop in Georgia. I've planned out the route. I have 45 shops to go to. I know about how much it's going to cost, and I'm going to spend a whole day live streaming, doing a bunch of weird stuff and chatting with you guys to raise money so that I can do this. So be on the lookout for that. Tell your local comic shop that you want to pick up these titles, and if you read it, what do you think?